This episode of Midco Sports Magazine is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Hello, welcome again to Midco Sports Magazine, and this is a big moment for us. This is our 8th anniversary and our 75th episode of doing this show, and we've got some great stories this week to help us mark that milestone. We will take you back a bit in our Midco Mag Rewind, an update on our story from 2013 on Nate Gerry, who at the time was a Sioux Falls kid trying to make his mark on the football field at the University of Nebraska. And our feature story on Doug Miller, from Sturgis, South Dakota to South Dakota State to the Super Bowl with the San Diego Chargers. One of the all-time titans of South Dakota sports, a great man and brother and son and teammate who was taken away way too soon. But we start with a young man who's about to start his sophomore season in basketball at Northern State University in Aberdeen. And if you're old enough to remember Dennis Rodman, our guy's kind of that same style of play, but not quite that level of weirdness. Parker Fox scores a lot of points for the Wolves, but his impact on the game is not in how much he scores, but how he does it. Here's David Brown.
And a steal by Parker Fox. Look out. Gliding in with a thunderous slam.
I know I had Sterlitz running up my back, so I knew I just got to jump, and hopefully I get there. If not, I'll lay it in, but I got there.
This kid's got pogo sticks for legs. Where he took off.
He's not a bird or a plane or even Superman. But Parker Fox, like the animals, machines, and man before him, appreciates the act of getting airborne.
It's just fun. It's just fun being up there. Junior year, I remember I was in our gym and I threw down a volleyball, and I was like, I can do that, so I'm going to try basketball. And I got it down, and I went crazy. And ever since then, it's kind of been my favorite thing to do.
Volleyball, basketball, no matter the object, Parker's been throwing it down since his high school days in Matamidi, Minnesota. But the bounce in his step and his demeanor came much sooner.
He never wanted to take naps as a kid. He wanted to be involved. He loved the older kids. He'd go up to a group of middle schoolers, high schoolers when he was probably 3 or 4 and say, hey guys, what are you doing?
He's pretty springy, and he's got the right mindset, for it too.
The right mind and the right frame were developed on the ground, which gave Parker the right to go high above it. Over the course of his high school career, Parker grew 11 inches.
You could definitely tell that, in junior and senior year, he kind of had a unique skill set that he could bring to the high school game, and if he continued to, work at it, and always showing a good, attitude and good effort, that probably the sky was the limit for him.
After high school, the skies pointed in the direction of Aberdeen, South Dakota. And even though he redshirted his freshman season at Northern State, Parker wouldn't be grounded for long.
And tried to alley-oop to Parker Fox. Oh my goodness!
I think it's really just a game changer. I mean, if you can get a dunk and you can get your crowd going, especially at Northern when we have the best fans in the country, you can get people on their feet, people excited about the game. It really transitions your offense.
Parker's very energetic. He likes the crowds.
Dunking may be more style than substance, but Parker knows the value of both.
Putting a little flair on it adds a little bit more excitement, and a lot of people can get dunks down but can't really put some flair on it. So I think flair really pumps people up, and it almost gets yourself pumped up to get a stop on defense and get a bucket the next time down the floor.
It's energy, and attitude, and effort, and he was just afforded the ability with some pretty springy legs.
Those legs will still be in line for more takeoffs throughout the rest of his college career. But Parker knows those individual highlights will mean even more if the whole team is lifted.
I want to win another conference championship. I want to win a national championship. I feel like we have the pieces and the coach to make runs and do good in the postseason.
Parker's never had an official nickname, although he says the one that stuck the most in high school was Bounce Man. And while he can't leap tall buildings in a single bound, he can provide a lift to both himself and everyone around him. A rim-rattling jam may be the end, but his energy justifies the means.
He's an excitable player, and just to see him out on the court, having a lot of success, both as an individual, but more importantly as a team, excites us.
He's got a very good attitude. He's passionate about it. He wants to do the right thing. Sometimes I think it looks like he's cocky or something, but he just loves it so much.
Everything I do is just with a high level of energy, and I play with a pretty high motor, and it wears me out, but I mean, it's the way I got to play.
Joined by David Brown. And Brownie, you hear about college athletes and you hear their parents' background, where they were athletes before and maybe they played this or that sport. But in Parker's case, his mom and dad had a little more unique background in athletics?
They certainly did. His dad obviously played basketball in high school. Didn't play in college, but you can see where the basketball fascination came from. Parker's mom, Heather, however, she played soccer and it was actually a speed skater. In fact, she was so good, when she was a senior in high school, she tried out for the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary. Now, the problem in preliminary rounds, she ran into none other than Bonnie Blair, who was the world champion at the time and who also happened to just win the gold medal at the 1988 Olympics.
All right, and Parker himself in high school, he's known for his hops in college, and that comes from his high school days.
Right. In high school, obviously, kids play a lot of different sports. Parker was involved in track and field, but only one event in track and field, the high jump. He didn't want to do any racing events. He just wanted to do the high jump, and if you've seen his basketball highlights, you can kind of figure out where that came from.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing him again this season. All right, thanks a lot, David Brown. Well, up next, now he is in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles. Then he was a freshman at Nebraska, still trying to figure out what position he was going to play. Back in time with Nate Gerry in the Midco Mag Rewind.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back. Time to rewind. And Nate Gerry was taken by the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL draft in 2017. But back in 2013, he was just a freshman at the University of Nebraska, trying to figure out if and where he fit into the Black Shirts defense.
And your Nebraska Cornhuskers!
To see him now at 6'2" and 220 pounds, with the size and the speed and the scholarship to one of the most storied college football programs in the country, you would think, oh, he is just blessed. He is lucky. And maybe that's true, but the determination and the drive of Nate Gerry and the work that he has had to put in to get to this point is a story that should inspire any young athlete.
It's a lot of work. People don't understand outside the doors. I know a lot of people that say that I was physically gifted and stuff, but I feel that I put a lot of work in high school to get where I wanted to be, because I wanted to be a college football player. So I had to do what I had to do to get to this level.
He did. He worked extremely hard. I looked when he left here and when he started getting recruited. One of the big things is, what is his weight room attendance like? And he was one of those guys that I think in his 4 years of weightlifting here that we took roll, he might have missed 2 times, and both those were because of conflicts he had with other type sports. So, he's a guy that, he dedicated himself to the weight room. He had a goal in mind. He wanted to play big-time college football. His goal as a kid growing up was to play at Nebraska, he told me, and when they offered him early in his junior year, towards the end of the track season, he came and talked to me and said, Coach, I think I'm going to take that at Nebraska. It's my all-time dream, and it's kind of nice to see kids be able to fulfill some of those goals.
Well, that goal was just starting to form 5 years ago when Gerry showed up as a shrimpy little 9th grader at Sioux Falls, Washington High School.
When he came here, you could tell that he was going to be a special athlete. He had he was probably around 5'9", 5'10" as a freshman, weighed about 152 pounds. Good-looking athlete with a lot of speed, and came out and did some great things right away in football. And then, after that, he bought into the big weight room thing we have going here and made himself a pretty nice football player.
Well, as a sophomore, Gerry wanted to be an offensive player, and he was a pretty good wide receiver that year. But going into Gerry's junior year, Hermanson thought that the Warriors were one great defensive player away from being a great team. So he convinced Gerry to move to the other side of the ball. And that's when Nate took off as a defensive dynamo.
I think once he got acclimated to playing the other side of the ball, being a safety, running around, being free, and having those really good shots you get to put on people, I think it opened his eyes to that there's a whole different part to football than just scoring touchdowns. And you can make a big difference on defense. And I think the people that recruited him, the bigger schools, they saw him as a defensive player. And the FBS, South Dakota States, USDs, the North Dakota States, they were all trying to recruit him as a wideout. And I think that in the back of his mind, he wanted to try it at the highest level he could try.
Well, say what you want about the Huskers this season, but Nebraska is still the highest level it gets in big-time college football. And when the Big Red came calling in his junior year, Gerry jumped on their offer.
They were my second official offer. They kind of tried hiding it a little bit. They pulled me on. I remember exactly pulled me on an anatomy class, and coach called me, and I talked to Coach Bell on the phone, and he offered me a scholarship. I told Coach Hermanson right there and then that when I go down there next, I'm going to commit.
Iowa State, I believe Iowa State, and I could be wrong. I think Iowa State offered him first, and that had to do a lot with Tom Farniak being there and opened some of the doors for us. And then Matt had. Nebraska offered him real early. They came up and watched the track practice, and then all of a sudden, the other avenues. There's a ton of schools: Arizona State, Michigan State, Oklahoma, Iowa, Minnesota. Then they all started coming. But it was once he got that Nebraska, and that was kind of like, if Nebraska's offering, maybe we should be offering them. You don't find guys, I don't care where you're at in the United States, that are his size and that can run like him, and he's just built. And so I think that's what, really, when they saw him and when he had that combine down there, when he performed so well down there, they're like, wow, this guy's off the charts. He's a pretty special guy, and we need this kid. He's close to our backyard, and there's no reason why we can't get him.
Well, they got him, and Gerry got more than even he expected early on in his college career, starting 3 games as a true freshman. And that came after changing positions. He had spent all summer learning how to play safety, but was moved to linebacker when fall camp started.
So, the hardest part for moving from safety to linebacker is, learning it all over again. You're coming from 12 yards deep to, about 5 yards, closer to the ball. So, that's just the hardest part was, transitioning my brain to, learn different things and, the fundamental aspects from being a linebacker from a safety.
He played a little linebacker for us at times. We moved him around a little bit, and we're a 3-4 defense, which kind of fits into the nickel that they're doing. The thing that he has to do now is at times he has to play inside the box between the 2 tackles, and that'll take him some time to adjust to that. I don't know. I looked online. I think he weighs 216 or 218. The guys usually inside the box are those guys that weigh 230. So he's going to have to put on a little more weight. And again, personnel will dictate what they want to do with him.
In the offseason, I'll probably gain a lot more weight. I'm not going to gain too much weight. I got to keep the wheels. But, yeah, I'll be a linebacker.
And there again is that determination, that confidence in him that some see as cocky, and so be it. He has learned to deal with the doubters, and he hears the haters, but does not really listen to what they say.
Sometimes people are jealous, and we talked a lot about that, about making good decisions. People are always going to be watching you. You got a ton of people that don't want to see you have success, but again, you're going to have people that are lined up to try to help you to do the best you can.
Just to know that my parents, my family always got my back. No matter what people say, I always know that my family's always going to love me no matter what. So just to have people that I can count on. Not worry about what's outside of my house. I always know that I got people to fall back on, like my parents. My parents raised me well since I was a little kid. I'm blessed to have them as parents.
And as he continues to lean on that support and continues to work toward his ultimate goal, that is the next big question. Does he have what it takes to play pro football?
I believe he does. The big thing in the NFL is, if you land on the right team. You look at, there's a ton of players out there. And I've talked to a lot of guys that have experienced the NFL. You have to be humble when you first go, because a lot of times making a team in the NFL is being a special teams player. I have no doubt in my mind that he's just working his fanny off, and whatever happens, happens.
Well, Gerry eventually ended up playing safety in his last 3 years at Nebraska, but has switched back now to linebacker now that he's in the NFL. Either way, it's worked out fine. Philly took him in 2017 in the 5th round, and the Eagles won the Super Bowl in Gerry's first year on the team. Nate had 28 tackles, 1 interception in his first 2 seasons, and he's going into his 3rd year now in Philadelphia. Our feature story on Doug Miller is still coming up. But first, more with Nate Gerry from 2019 in the Science of Sports.
Sports science is the use of scientific tools and methods to improve athletic health and performance. Nate Gerry is an athletic, physical football player, and in order to excel at his position, he needs to have strength, power, and speed. Nate has worked really hard to add lean muscle mass and minimize his body fat. We can help him stay on top of his game by measuring body composition and using ultrasound measures of muscle health. Body composition measures lean body mass and percent body fat, and that can be really helpful to athletes to be able to gauge a training program, or if they have specific targets of gaining weight or losing weight, so that they can maximize lean body mass and minimize percent body fat.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. Well, some people are just larger than life, and Doug Miller was one of those people. He died 21 years ago, but he lived life like few others in his 28 years on the planet. And this is just some of his story, but it's a tribute to one of the all-time titans of South Dakota sports.
Big heart, big guy. Everything he did had so much passion.
Doug Miller grew up in Piedmont, South Dakota, and went to high school in Sturgis.
You see Doug out there?
6'4", 220 pounds.
The Doug Miller Show for Sturgis right now.
He was a basketball star in his early days.
And one of the things I remember watching, even in high school, is his ability to dunk a basketball. He was just doing things that really looked like no one else could ever do. And of course, that's not the case, but at the time, that's what it felt like to me, looking up to him is, yeah, he could do anything.
And he was good at everything, basketball and track and baseball. But Doug Miller was a great football player. A massive mix of strength and speed.
Early on, as soon as you step on the field with Doug or you see him, you kind of know there's something special. And athletic, quick, and then you add a factor of a deeper level of an aggression that is competitive and intelligence.
Dave Peterson grew up in Rapid City. He played against Miller in grade school and then with Miller when they got a little bit older. Eventually, they played football together for 4 years at South Dakota State. Dave as a defensive back, Doug as a linebacker.
It was fun. It was exciting to watch him. There was always something going on, which was exciting, funny, what have you. So, it was a good time, good memories.
In my memory, Miller was equal parts of competitiveness and compassion. Mischievous with a bit of a mean streak.
No, I've mellowed out a lot here in the last couple of years, so I'm kind of chilled out at that.
But all of that was always tempered by kindness and a wink and a grin.
Everything he did really came from a big heart, whether it was picking on you or building you back up. All of it went with good intentions and with a good heart and with a smile.
Miller was a two-time All-American at South Dakota State, and in 1993, the San Diego Chargers took him in the NFL draft. A big deal for a Division II guy.
It was a surprise, and everyone was happy for him, but I don't think anyone was amazed that he made it to the NFL.
He played 2 seasons in San Diego and made a splash with the Chargers in their only Super Bowl appearance in 1995. But injuries forced him out of the league after just those 2 years, and Miller had to move on.
Certainly he was down with injuries and things, but not down on life and what he could do. It was just, gosh, how do I get through this because I've got more? And that was just, he always had more.
Always driven, with an almost mythical physical ability. Miller was the guy who laughed at pain. And that is what makes the events of July 21st, 1998, all that much more unbelievable.
Certainly most devastating day of my life.
Marnie was living in Colorado at the time.
Doug came down to where I was working. We had lunch. He kissed me on the forehead, and that was it. That was really the last time I had any contact with him. The next thing I knew is that Dave was at my front door and told me what had happened.
Doug was getting ready to head back to the University of California, where he was coaching and working on his master's degree. But first, he and Dave were going camping a few hours west of Denver.
So we get to this rustic campsite, and there's nobody around. So we just pull into this site and we set up a tent, and we were going fishing. So I thought, well, let's set up so at least when we get back, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to be walking in the dark, so let's set up our tent. And so we set it up, and I went back to the truck, and all of a sudden it didn't even rain, it just started hailing. And then we thought, well, our tent's going to get trashed, so maybe we better take our tent down. And that's when, you know, Doug reached through and he picked up the tent, and he went to carry it up to put it under some trees, and he got hit. And I got to him and got him breathing, and thought we had him back, and you know, for 2 minutes I was feeling pretty good about myself again too, because I thought we were good. And then another one hit and came through him and threw me off of him. And I went and moved him from the place we were at because it was the ground was just buzzing.
Dave moved his truck to a nearby road and honked the horn in hopes of getting some help. And to his amazement, a man did show up. And then a few minutes later, 2 others appeared.
They were 2 EMT helicopter pilots from California. And so they started helping me. And, you know, then we're starting to think that, you know, we got a chance. And then we started hearing a helicopter coming, and it would show up. We could hear it right above us, but we couldn't see it. They had to fly around the storm, and they couldn't land. So eventually they landed, and when they did, I mean, we were just, they called it. It was too far gone because they couldn't take him.
Doug Miller was only 28 years old when he died. A legend in my mind. A great man and a brother and teammate and friend and an example of how to live in the minds of those who knew him best.
I'm really thankful that I got to do what I did with him. Easy to love and easy to hate. You know, that's what he is. Because if he's on the other side of me, that's not the guy I like. And when he's on your side, easy to love.
It's hard, right? It's hard because I still feel very tender about some of this, but it makes me proud. I appreciate that people remember him. I appreciate the impact he had on people. That 20 years later, a guy from Piedmont, South Dakota is still being talked about. It's amazing. Those are things that I have to remember because it is hard. But it makes me smile to realize that we thought he impacted a lot of people, and he really did.
Thanks for watching Midco Sports Magazine. You can find this episode and all episodes on YouTube and IGTV.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.